Tony Abbott.
I'm standing next to someone who has well been described as Australia's Mr. Broadband because Malcolm not only knows the internet, he virtually brought it to this country through his work with Aussie Mail.
So
I missed that memo. Is that
brought
true?
the internet to Australia.
Well, actually, he was in a barrel. It was interesting. How do I get out of this one?
And I don't claim to be any kind of a tech head.
You know what peak speed is?
Again, if you're going to get me into a technical argument, I'm going to lose it, Kerry, because I'm not a tech head. 12 and up, and we think in
but you're
the
guaranteeing 12.
That's right.
Are you sure about the... Can you really give that guarantee when you don't seem to know what peak speed is? I'll tell you what it is. It's quite an easy concept to understand. Peak speed is the best speed at which you can download material, usually when people are least likely to be using the internet, like at midnight. At other times, when there is congestion on the net, the speed will be much lower than that. So how can you say, as a matter of course, that the speeds your system will deliver will actually, more often than not, be much more than 12?
We're not against using the internet for all these things, but do we really want to invest $50 billion of hard-earned taxpayers' money in what is essentially a video entertainment system? I think that the climate change science is far from settled. The fact that we've had, if anything, cooling global temperatures over the last decade. I also think that if you want to put a price on carbon, why not just do it with a simple tax? Why not ask motorists to pay more? Why not ask electricity consumers to pay more? And then at the end of the year you can take your invoices to the tax office and get a rebate of the carbon tax you've paid. But certainly I think that if the simple challenge is to put a price on carbon, if you were to put a carbon tax on energy consumption, if you were to put a carbon tax on fuel consumption, and if you were then to rebate that tax to the people who paid it, you would have raised the price of carbon, you would have avoided an increase in the overall tax burden, and you would have gone down a path that everyone understands. So I think that would have been a much simpler way of going. Prime Minister should not be swanning around in New York talking to Africans. She should be in Jakarta right now trying to sort out the border protection disaster. She should be in Jakarta talking to President Yudhoyono about how we can cooperate better with the Indonesians.
There was just one problem, though.
If Mr Abbott had bothered to check his facts, he'd know that the President is actually in New York at the moment.
Late Lines confirmed Julia Gillard's sharing a speaking engagement later in the week with President Yudhoyono in New York.
How's that turning into a media circus? Okay, well, tell me, what's the context, and if it's out of context, what is the context? You're not saying anything, Tony.
I've given you the response you deserve.
Well, what's the context, though? If it's not... I've listened to all the tapes. There's 3 camera angles of that discussion. Are you saying it's not about McKinney, about that operation? Well, what is the right context? I'm asking you. Can I ask you how it's been taken out of context? No. Nothing else to say, Tony? Okay. Just turn the cameras off. Mr Abbott's office tried to prevent the full footage of his Afghanistan visit from being released. 7 News only secured it after a 3-month freedom of information battle.
Homosexuality. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I probably feel a bit threatened.
Man has so consistently denied to meeting me.
Look, it was a stunt. Let's be upfront about this. I know Bernie is very sick, but just because a person is sick doesn't mean that he is necessarily pure of heart in all things.
Plain paper packaging, yes or no? And are you going to keep taking tobacco donations?
If it shuts you up for a second, yes, Julia.
And tobacco donations, you're going to keep taking them?
Julia, you keep taking donations from the CFMEU. We'll take donations from companies engaged in legitimate business.
So that's a yes to tobacco donations?
I'd better refer that to Brian Loughnane, but look, it's a legal business, and I'm not saying we won't take the donations.
If you are so against smoking, it probably is time for you to say, well, you know what, let's not take the donations from a tobacco company.
Look, it is legal to smoke. It's not the mafia. It's not even the CFMEU. I don't see why. If they want to make a donation, we shouldn't accept it. What the housewives of Australia need to understand is they do the ironing. A woman takes leave because she's having a baby. She should be paid at her wage. Just as if a bloke takes leave to go on holidays, he should be paid at his wage.
So a woman having a baby is the same as a man going on holidays, Joe? Is that right? Yeah?
Well, I no.
It certainly wasn't intentional. That's bullshit. Yeah, sure. Being deliberately unpleasant. I suppose you can't help yourself, can you?
It's only happened 5 times before and never been caught on camera.
The Leader of the Opposition will withdraw without qualification.
I withdraw.
I thank the Leader of the
It's
Opposition.
still an untrue statement.
The Leader of the Opposition will remove himself from the chamber under 94A.
Here we see Craig Thompson coming in, sitting on the opposition side of the benches. The opposition realises, and that's Christopher Pyne hightailing it to the door, followed by Tony Abbott. Now, Mr Pyne later told his colleagues he ran like a gazelle and made it out. Tony Abbott wasn't fast enough. And if you look in the bottom of the screen there, the bottom left, you'll see the big frame of Warren Entsch running into a door physically, trying to get out of the place. So.
The statements that need to be taken absolutely as gospel truth is those carefully prepared, scripted remarks.
So every time you make a statement, we have to ask you whether it's carefully prepared and scripted or whether it's just something on the fly.
You're not seriously telling me, Lee, that the mining tax and the carbon tax have made Australia an easier place to invest in?
I'm going on the facts that Marius Kloppers said today when he was directly asked if the decision on Olympic Dam was affected by Australia's tax situation, and I'm going on the facts that are outlined in their results statement that they've issued. Have you actually read BHP's statements?
No, but I've...
No, you haven't read their statements today, but, but you're on commenting about what they've announced today and how the federal government's to blame for that.
Tony Abbott's push to gain traction with women voters has been damaged, with claims he intimidated a female student while attending the University of Sydney in the 70s. Barbara Ramjan, who was a social work student, beat Mr Abbott for the SRC presidency in 1977. She says when Mr Abbott learnt of the results, he stood within an inch of her face and punched the wall either side of her head.
The person in the caucus of the Labor Party knows that Julia Gillard's a liar. Everybody. I'll cover that in a moment. The old man must be nightly. He's going shame.
Another day of shame for a government which should already have died of shame.
To which Tony Abbott is capable of changing his mind on important elements of policy. The climate change policy was one of them. If he's changed it once, he can presumably change it again. Indeed, he did tell us that he doesn't always say what he means. The Labor Party didn't capitalise on that too much. I think Tony Abbott would do what he felt he needed to do to get into power or have power, if that's going to be possible. But I would like to see somebody with a deep conviction about where Australia will go and who will have some constance in terms of important policy. And that's not been demonstrated by the current Liberal Party.
I mean, if Tony Abbott ends up the Prime Minister of Australia, I mean, you've got to say, God help us. God help us, you know. An intellectual, truly an intellectual nobody, and no policy ambition. You know, I mean, is that all there is? You know the song, is that all there is? I mean, is that where we'd be, really? I mean, I used to, look, he turned up in the last couple of years when I was Prime Minister. I regard him as a sort of resident nutter on their side.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Oh, really?